Okay, welcome to the deep dive. We've got something, well, potentially fascinating today.
Yeah, maybe a bit surprising too, especially if you follow World of Warcraft Classic.
Exactly. So, what's surfaced appears to be a confidential survey.
That's right. It looks like leaked information,
Hmm.
and it's full of concept ideas for, well, a hypothetical new version of World of Warcraft Classic.
Right. And we need to be clear about what this survey seems to be doing based on the info itself.
Yeah, it says it's testing concepts, some from player feedback apparently, but crucially, it also says, not everything in the survey is actually being worked on.
Uh-huh. So the main goal is just getting a feel for what players like. Or maybe even more importantly, what you definitely don't want to see.
Exactly. Finding out what might be considered for World of Warcraft Classic down the line.
And the fact it was supposed to be confidential, that makes it leaking out pretty noteworthy, right?
Absolutely. Because respondents were asked to keep quiet. So this gives the community a sort of early peek, even if it's unofficial, into the kinds of things being thought about.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is pretty straightforward then. We're going to unpack these specific ideas from the leak.
Yep. We'll look at what the concepts are, just based on their descriptions in the material that surfaced.
And then maybe talk a bit about what they could mean for the game, sticking only to the details we actually have from this leak.
Sounds like a plan. Let's get into these concepts. It probably makes sense to group them, like the summary of the game, what the leak did. Maybe start with the quality of life and convenience stuff.
Okay, yeah. Quality of life in Classic always gets my attention. What's the first concept?
First up is collections. The description is basically a UI storage system for your pets, mounts, and toys, designed to free up inventory space.
Oh, collection. Like in modern World of Warcraft, that would be
Yeah.
huge. Seriously, the bag space struggle in Classic is real. My bank is just full.
It's a clear move towards making inventory less painful.
Wow.
Getting those cosmetic things out of your bags and into their own interface.
That addresses a big friction point. Definitely a convenience thing.
And related to that, the leak also mentions account-wide collections.
Ah, okay. So getting a mount on one character
Means all your other characters on that account can use it too. Pets, mounts, toys, everything shared.
Yeah, that feels good. You put in the work for something cool, you should be able to show it off on any character, right?
It makes a lot of sense from that perspective. And it definitely encourages playing alts more.
Yeah, you're not re-earning everything.
And speaking of encouraging alts and account-wide stuff, there's an even bigger concept mentioned. An account-wide perks and progression system.
Whoa, okay. What does that mean?
The description talks about a system where you gather points, maybe by playing different characters or doing specific things, and then you spend those points on account-wide bonuses. Things like quality of life perks, other conveniences, basically rewarding you for playing alts or specializing.
An account-wide progression system. That's a fundamental change from Classic, isn't it? Where everything is so character-focused.
It absolutely is. Original Classic is all about that character's journey. This introduces a layer of progression that benefits your whole account. It shifts the focus a bit.
Lots to think about there. What other convenience ideas were floated?
There's cross-realm play. The description is pretty simple, letting you group with friends from other servers for dungeons, BGs, that kind of thing. Instanced content.
Okay, well, playing with friends easily is always good. If your buddy is on a different server, you could still run a dungeon together.
That seems to be the idea. Makes grouping simpler, for sure.
What about server communities? That's a big part of Classic.
That's the potential downside, yeah. It breaks down those realm barriers, which could impact the unique feel of each server's community. It's that classic, no pun intended, trade-off. Convenience versus maybe social structure.
Right, so these things, collections, account-wide stuff, cross-realm, they definitely fit that idea from the leak summary that they're testing hashtag no changes breaking quality of life ideas.
Exactly. That whole hashtag no changes thing was about keeping Classic exactly as it was. These concepts clearly challenge that core idea.
Okay, so moving past convenience. The leak also mentions bigger design shifts, right? Things that might change classes or core systems.
Definitely. Some potentially quite controversial ideas here.
Let's hear them. What's first?
Okay, this one. It definitely raises eyebrows. Playable Shamans on the Alliance side.
Wait, what? Alliance Shamans.
That's what the concept says. The introduction of Shaman class to the Alliance. Simple as that.
Shamans are Horde. Like, Paladins are Alliance. That's fundamental. Does it mention Paladins for Horde, too?
It doesn't explicitly list Paladins for Horde in the leaked text we have, but you'd have to assume that's implied or a related concept, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, the balance is completely skewed.
Yeah, wow. Alliance Shamans, that changes everything. Faction identity, raid setups, PvP balance.
Huge implications across the board. It's probably the clearest example in the leak of an idea that aims to soften those hard faction lines, giving players more choice regardless of faction.
Okay, and it's not just moving existing classes. There's also new class abilities and spells mentioned.
Yep. Brand new class abilities and boar spells unique to this version of Classic. So not just tuning numbers, but actually adding new buttons to press, new mechanics for classes people know inside and out.
That's bold. Adding new spells to Classic classes could really alter how they play. What about adjusting existing stuff?
There's a concept for that too. Class talent adjustments. The description mentions streamlining and improving class talent trees to make weaker specializations and classes more viable.
Ah, trying to fix the specs nobody plays.
Seems like it. But it adds the caveat while still maintaining the overall feel and flow of classic combat. So the goal is better balance, more viable options, but hopefully without losing that core classic combat rhythm.
That sounds like a tricky balance to get right.
Very tricky. And shifting gears to a major system, there's a concept called honor rewards redesign.
Okay, the PvP honor system, how would that change?
The idea is to move away from the original weekly ranking grind. Instead, it suggests a more seasonal model where new honor rewards are added to coincide with new PvE raid tier updates.
So, PvP gear progression would be tied to raid releases.
That's what it sounds like. New raid tier drops, maybe new PvP gear becomes available through honor. It connects the PvP and PvE progression cycles much more closely than they were in original Classic.
Okay, yeah, these definitely feel like those big design shifts the leak summary talked about, not just little tweaks.
No, these are potentially game-altering concepts. Which brings us to a third group of ideas in the leak things that seem pulled more directly from modern World of Warcraft or are just entirely new types of content for Classic.
Right, there's a whole bunch of these listed. Let's start with 1v1 duel arenas.
Yeah, the description is the ability to go into a special dueling area for 1v1 contests that are viewable by spectators.
So formalizing duels, instead of just outside Orgrimmar or Stormwind.
Exactly. A dedicated space, maybe with rankings or just for fun. But the spectator part is interesting too. Could make for little community events.
Then there's a visual one, new player character models.
Simple concept. Updating the character models to look like the ones in the current modern version of World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
Higher fidelity, less blocky.
Purely cosmetic, but a big visual change for people who prefer the old look or the new one.
Then there's in-game events. The idea is new events that offer different small quests and casual gameplay around the world, releasing between the big content updates.
Ah, like little world quests or holiday-style events to keep things fresh.
Sort of, yeah. A way to add ongoing, maybe more casual content so there's always something happening in the world, even if you're not raiding or grinding PvP.
Okay, and here's one I definitely associate with modern Wadabu pet battles.
Yep. Collect pets from the game world and have them compete head-to-head with other pets in turn-based battles.
That's a whole separate game within the game, really. Putting that into Classic feels like a very different direction.
It absolutely is. It has zero basis in the original game's design. It adds a whole layer of collection and strategy that's completely new to the Classic framework.
The survey also looked at improving existing Classic systems, though, right? Like leveling professions improvements.
Yes. The concept is about making crafted gear more useful while you're actually leveling. Ability to make more usable gear for yourself as you level and be able to craft it at level-appropriate trade skill levels.
That makes sense. Often the stuff you craft while leveling gets replaced so fast. Making professions feel more impactful during the 160 journey could be nice.
They make leveling feel a bit different, yeah. More self-sufficient, maybe.
And back to race options. Alongside Alliance Shamans, there's playable High Elves for both factions.
The description says playable High Elf-like race for the Horde and the Alliance. So yeah, similar to the Shaman idea, it touches on faction identity.
High Elves have a complicated history in the lore depending on which elf group we're talking about.
Exactly. And putting a High Elf-style race on both factions really hammers home that theme of softening faction lines, giving more cosmetic or race options regardless of your faction choice.
What about new places to go? The leak mentions revisiting known but unexplored zones.
Yeah, places like Mount Hyable, Oldham, Gilneas. Zones that were part of the world or lore. Maybe you could see them in the distance, but you couldn't actually go there in original World of Warcraft.
Oh, that's cool. Opening up those areas, that could be really exciting. Exploring places you've only heard about.
Definitely taps into that sense of discovery and existing lore. Lots of potential for new quests or content there.
Another big feature from later versions, player housing.
Described as instanced personalized housing for players and guilds. So your own little space to decorate and hang out in.
Less about power, more about cosmetics and social stuff.
Primarily, yes. A place to customize, maybe show off trophies, or just have a guild hall. It's a social and cosmetic feature mainly.
And achievements, like in the modern game.
Yep. A system to track game milestones and accomplishments. Gives you structured goals, rewards you for exploring different parts of the game, ticking off boxes.
Has another layer of objectives beyond just gear and levels.
And finally, one that always sparks debate when it comes to Classic. The World of Warcraft token.
Ah, yes. How does the survey describe this one? We need to be careful here. Stick to the text.
Okay. The description provided in the leaked material is a secure and convenient way for players to exchange gold for game time or battle.net balance.
So it's presented purely as that mechanism. Players trade gold amongst themselves, essentially, facilitated by this token item for either game time or account balance.
That's the function described in the text, yes. Allowing players with lots of gold to get game time or balance, and letting players who want gold get it via the token purchased by others.
Right. Okay, so all these features, the arenas, new models, pet battles, housing, achievements, the token, these are explicitly things being considered for modern World of Warcraft, testing if players want them in Classic.
That seems to be the clear implication, yes. Gauging interest in bringing those modern conveniences or systems into a classic environment.
So, looking back at everything we've just discussed from this leaked survey, it really covers a massive range, doesn't it?
It really does. It confirms what the summary points highlighted.
Yeah.
They're looking at quality of life that breaks #no changes, like collections, but also potentially fundamental shifts, like the PvP rewards or the class and faction changes.
And very explicitly bringing in major features directly from the modern game. Things like pet battles, achievements, player housing, even the World of Warcraft token.
But, and this is really important to stress again, just like the survey supposedly says, these are concepts.
Right, just ideas floated to see how people react, not promises, not announced features.
Exactly. The whole point seems to be finding out what you, the players, would like to see, and maybe just as importantly, what you really, really wouldn't want.
That said, we have seen stuff from past surveys eventually make it into the game, haven't we? Like, maybe some ideas related to looking for Dungeon and Wrath Classic, or things that popped up in Season of Discovery.
That's true. Past surveys have sometimes foreshadowed things that eventually happened in some form or another. So while nothing here is guaranteed,
paying attention to this kind of leak can sometimes give you a hint, maybe a speculative one, about where things might be headed for World of Warcraft Classic.
it's definitely food for thought.
Okay, so we've covered a huge spectrum. Simple UI tweaks, major convenience boosts, fundamental class and faction changes, entirely new systems pulled from the modern game, all presented as concepts in this leak.
And all based just on the information that surfaced from this survey material, testing the waters.
Yeah. So, with such a wide range of ideas being tested, some aiming to, maintain the feel of classic combat while making balance changes, others introducing things completely alien to original classic like pet battles or the token.
It leaves you, the listener, with a pretty big question to chew on, doesn't it?
It really does. Thinking about all this, what parts of World of Warcraft Classic do you feel are absolutely essential? What makes it classic for you?
And how might some of these potential changes we talked about reshape that whole experience for you, for the community? Where's the line?
Is there a line that shouldn't be crossed when evolving Classic?
That's the big question this survey leak leaves us wrestling with. Something to think about after this deep dive.